It's been a wild week, and I just wanted to thank everyone for following my journey with the Switch 2 ban. I'm far from the only person who was affected by it, but I'm glad that I was able to take my experiences and share them with a wider audience. I've been following along with the conversations, controversy, and questions in the comments of the last few videos, and I realize there's a bit more we can cover to just kind of put a nice bow on the whole journey and get some definitive answers out there. I also thought it would be fun to explore the banned vs bricked conversation and why I had decided to interchangeably use the two words with my Switch 2 videos. To start, let's actually talk about what caused my Switch 2 to get banned. This Switch cartridge is the source of Nintendo banning devices recently. For those who don't know, it's called the MIG switch or the MIG flash, and it's considered a flash cartridge. It lets you take your physically owned games with this device called a dumper, plug it into your computer, and turn it into digital copies that can be placed on the MIG flash. The MIG flash lets you have as many games as will fit on a micro SD card, and you can take all of them with you on the go with this single cartridge. You can swap between which game is active in the cartridge and then launch the game just like the actual physical cartridge. This does lead to a lot of piracy conversations and what kind of implication this has to the used game market. And it's a fair point. If someone is willing to share their cartridge files, which contain unique identifiers, then yes, that's a problem. But that puts their games at risk of being flagged too, so really nobody wins there. For the used game market, I think it's fair. You don't know if you're buying a cartridge that's been used with the flash card. But at the same time, I wouldn't expect that to be a huge issue unless that game was traded in literally hundreds of times. But the intended use is, to me, morally justified. Take my physical games that I actually own and put them on one single cartridge. You may disagree with this mentality, and if you do, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But anyway, that's the MIG flash or the MIG switch. Speeding up to today, the MIG flash worked great on Switch 1, and I've got an in-depth video looking at that experience. And while I can't say for certain, it does seem that the cartridge is going to still continue to work perfectly fine on a Switch 1. That brings us to the Switch 2. 2 weeks ago after the midnight launch of Switch 2, I tried this cartridge on my Switch 2. Nothing happened. Literally nothing. It just errored out. No games would launch, so all seemed fine. I played a ton of Mario Kart and just went on my way using my Switch 2 normally. But then almost exactly 2 weeks later, Nintendo started a wave of bans. From my last two videos, we were able to verify that this is technically a ban. The console gets banned and your Nintendo account is totally fine. But it does bring up the question, does a banned Switch 2 even have any use? A lot of comments speculated that it's simply a disconnected Switch 2. So let's start with what the Switch 2 ban looks like. Almost anything that requires connection to Nintendo servers are out of the question. This means no eShop, no Nintendo Online, no game updates, and any games that you've previously purchased cannot be added to your banned Switch. It's a completely walled off console. If your Switch 2 is banned and you keep it exactly as is, meaning don't try to restore the system, whatever is on your device will still continue to be there. But you won't be able to download any other games. Any digital games or virtual cartridge games that aren't loaded already will not be able to be played. For my banned Switch 2, I wiped the console, and I unlinked the console from my account settings. The only thing Nintendo didn't seem to block from a banned Switch 2 is firmware updates. During a live stream the other day, someone let me know about the firmware update, and we tried to do it on the banned Switch live on stream. And surprisingly, it worked. I'm not really sure what good a firmware update will do, except maybe keep trying to block software exploits, but hey, at least it's something we're allowed to do. You would think that a banned Switch 2 paired with the MIG switch might actually be the best way to play Switch 1 games. But I went through my Switch 1 library and the results were truly surprising and a little puzzling. My physical copies of Let's Go Pikachu, Mario Rabbids Kingdom Battle, Pokemon Sword, Pokemon Brilliant Diamond, Battle for Bikini Bottom, and Pokken Tournament DX all launched without any issues on my banned Switch. But one game was inconsistent. I have 2 physical copies of Nickelodeon Kart Racers. Don't ask why. One of those carts worked totally fine, but the other cartridge requires a software update. And that leads us to some games I'd consider heavy hitters that just simply wouldn't play from the physical cartridge for me. Mario Kart 8, Pokemon Violet, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, and Animal Crossing's New Horizons. Someone else may actually even have totally different results depending on the revision of your game's cartridge, and using the MIG cartridge won't change that result. cycling through games, we find the same results. Some games work, while others require an update and won't launch. This really just means that it's a bit of a wild card which Switch 1 games will or will not work on a banned Switch 2. Moving on to cartridges specifically for Switch 2, we're going to find a bit of a mixed bag here too. But not because of the software update requirements, although I wouldn't rule it out in the future for other games. We don't have many Switch 2 cartridges to go off of, but we know that there are already 3 types of carts. There's physical cartridges where the entire game is on the cartridge. That will be first-party Nintendo games, and then whichever other publishers decide to opt for the more expensive game cartridge. There are also game key cards. These cartridges don't actually have the game itself, but a key that will download the full game to your Switch 2. In order to play that fully downloaded game, you need the cartridge in your system to play the game. You can resell this game, you can share it to a friend, all physically. But because it's a key card, the full game download is required and there is no game data on the cartridge. Then there are code-in-a-box games. These are games that have a physical box, but there is no cartridge, just a code to redeem through the eShop. Games that are fully on the cartridge, like Cyberpunk, launch and run perfectly fine. No internet needed, no downloads required, and no need to connect to a server of any kind. I also, in my infinite wisdom, purchased my 3rd copy of Mario Kart World just to try it out. Nintendo did seem like they were going to stand behind first-party Nintendo games being fully playable directly from the cartridge, so we had to give it a try. And yeah, it does work perfectly fine. And I figured while I'm at it, let's also give Breath of the Wild a try. Which yeah, the Nintendo Switch 2 edition works perfectly fine. But how could we give Breath of the Wild a try and not check Tears of the Kingdom 2? And yeah, that one works perfectly fine as well. So yeah, it does seem like if the game is actually truly fully on the cartridge, we're good to go and we don't need to connect to Nintendo servers, so they play perfectly fine even on a banned console. For game key cards, I was pretty sure that they just straight up wouldn't work, but being allowed to do firmware updates on the Switch 2 did have me second guessing it. I picked up Yakuza 0. The packaging clearly states that it's a game key card and you will need 47GB of free storage and an internet connection. I also grabbed Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S, which is also a game key card with a measly 4GB download required. And yeah, these games just don't work. The game art doesn't even show on the home screen. It just prompts me to download the game, which isn't possible because of the device ban. I didn't need to pick up Code-in-a-Box because we already know how that one's going to work. We can't get into the eShop, and there's no way to redeem a code without being fully allowed onto Nintendo servers, so codes simply will not work. A lot of discussion has come up around the used marketplace for Switch 2. First off, don't buy from a seller who isn't willing to answer your questions. If you're on eBay and the description does not explicitly say that the device is fully working and calls out that the eShop will load and connect, don't buy it. That is simply the easiest way to tell if the device is blocked from Nintendo servers. Message the seller. Ask questions. If they don't answer, it's not worth the risk. Second, refurbished and used devices from game stores are probably going to be your safest bet if you're planning to buy used. I went to a few GameStops asking them about their trade-in process, being completely transparent about my banned Switch 2 that I have no intention on trading in. They reassured me that their trade-in process requires them to restore the device to factory settings, sign into their own internal Nintendo account, and verify everything works as expected, including the eShop. And this is the right thing to do. A few employees even seem to hint that they have a system that will actually show them flagged Switch 2 devices. If anybody actually works at GameStop and can verify that, I'd love to know more. Of course, if you buy a device from a marketplace and it's listed as is or parts only, then you should probably understand that what you're buying is a wild card, and it's more likely than not that it's just going to be broken or a banned device. If you got banned for using the MIG switch morally, I don't think it's deserved to be banned, but I also think it's malicious to try to scam a store into taking the device back. Unfortunately, it's a decision that we have to live with. To get into the technicalities, what I have here is a banned console. The system boots up and can start up some games, you can navigate through menus, it's just not allowed to connect to Nintendo servers. But on the other hand, while a bricked device usually means the device literally just won't turn on or play any games, I feel that it's totally justified to see a banned Switch 2 as a bit more than simply banned. We just need Nintendo servers for some key functionality on the device, even if we don't want to use Nintendo's online services. Switch 1 games may or may not work. Switch 2 game key cards are completely useless, and it's not possible to get game updates. I think this is somewhere in between a ban and a brick. It does boot up and it can play games in certain circumstances, but you really are restricted from even many offline activities because of the device's reliance on software updates. Just simply the fact that a lot of my physical Switch 1 games can't be played on Switch 2 at all is a huge downside. So while yes, there are things you can do, and there's thousands of Switch 1 games out there, and I'm sure you'll find plenty that will play fine on Switch 2, there will also seemingly be just as many that can't be played on a banned device. It's also a huge downside that Switch 2 physical games are becoming pretty rare. Sure, you can probably count on playing the big Nintendo first-party releases, but that's still pretty limiting. And that's it. I think the Switch 2 ban journey is coming to an end for me. I'll be keeping my device around in case we get a mod chip or software exploits released eventually, but the world is going more and more digital, and a banned Switch 2 is really proving that more than ever, an offline console is not really all that useful. I knew the risks of trying the MIG cartridge, and while it sucks to have to go out and buy a second Switch 2, I'm happy I got to dive into all of the nuances of what this actually means and share that experience with everyone. I also hope this whole fiasco serves as a warning for others who have the MIG Switch device, especially if buying or even finding a replacement Switch 2 is not something you're going to be able to do. And you know what? The bright side is that I had fun going through this adventure with everyone. These are quite contentious topics, so I'm sure there's a lot to say, so let's hear it all down in the comments. I'll be posting more handheld gaming videos and more Switch 2 stuff, so make sure you're subscribed. And that's it. On to the next video. I'm done talking about MIG Switch. I'm putting that thing in my Switch 1, turning my Switch 1 off, and moving on. There's a lot of other things to talk about. I still got the Retroid Pocket Classic to look at. I still want to look at a bunch of more Switch 2 stuff. I've got a whole thing written about Switch 2 tips and tricks. I have the iNeo 3. I have the Miu Flip. I have the Anbernic 34XX SP. There's just so many devices, and here I am talking about the Switch, but I like the Switch, so it's all good. But what do you think? There's a lot of haters for the Nintendo world out there. Why do you hate Nintendo so much? I don't love Nintendo as a company, but their games are fun. What can I say? There's tons of other games out there, though. I mean, I love my Steam Deck. I love my Ally X. I'm just a device fan. I like tinkering. Yeah, that's it. That's what I got. See ya.